We're going to talk about the phylum cnidarian. They are a little bit more advanced than what you see with the porifera. Much like the porifera, they are simple tissues and have no organs or organ systems. They have some features or formats of them that are mobile. Much like the porifera, they have both sexual and asexual reproduction. So, some examples of the phylum cnidaria are hydra, jellyfish, coral, and sea anemones. And there are some features that they all have in common that put them into this particular phylum. So, some examples: sea anemones, corals, sea pen, sea fan, sea plume, hydra, jellyfish, Portuguese man-o'-war, and the box jelly, which is a little bit different than some of the other jellyfish. Okay, the body structure, jumping all over the place here. Body structure, they have polymorphism, which means that they have more than one form. They have both the polyp and the medusa. The polyp has the tentacles on the top. The medusa has the tentacles on the bottom. Both body forms have a gastrodermis, which is where digestion occurs. They also have an epidermis and an endodermis and kind of a mesoglea in the middle, which is that jelly-like substance. So the one that's upright with the tentacles on the top is called the polyp. The one that is upside down and has the tentacles on the bottom is called the medusa. When you look at the polyps, so hydra are polyps, sea anemones are polyps, coral, when you look at it, they have tentacles up on the top. The tentacles open up into a mouth. They are generally sessile, which means that they don't move. Hydra do have the ability to somersault, to stand on their tentacles if they need to get away. And some of the sea anemones do have the ability to dislodge their disc at the bottom and swim away if there's a predator. So there's an example of a polyp form, which is the sea anemone. So here is a live hydra, or two of them. They are green in color. That is the mouth that the food is coming out of. You can see the worm going down the digestive into that gastrovascular cavity. And the other one has an insect, a water insect called a daphnia that it's eating. The medusa form is umbrella-shaped. The tentacles are around the mouth, and this particular form of it is motile or mobile. It can swim using the tentacles in its body form. Some use air. Some use muscular-like contractions to get it to move. The tentacles themselves have stinging cells that are called nematocysts. Basically, they are sharp little harpoons that come out and have a neurotoxin in them. And what happens is that neurotoxin paralyzes their prey. So the cnidarians will send those nematocysts into their prey. They'll get paralyzed. They will pull the prey back in using the tentacles and push it into its mouth to feed. So there is one of them that is actually coming out and being discharged. So, levels of organization, much like the sponges, there are tissues, but there are no organs, there are no organ systems. Unlike the sponge, they do have symmetry, and it's radial, which means, remember, you can cut it in any different direction as long as you're going through the center, and the sides will be equal. If you're looking at habitat, most are marine, but there are a few freshwater varieties. They are all considered to be carnivores, which means they're predators. They use, like we said before, the tentacles to sting the prey with the nematocysts. They grab them with their tentacles and then pull them into their mouth. So that is a lion mane jelly eating a smaller jellyfish. So when they feed, their prey is stuffed into their gastrovascular cavity. Like our digestive system, they produce enzymes, and those enzymes will digest the food outside of the organism cells. That's what extracellular digestion means. Whatever is not digested goes back out the same opening or mouth. It is a one-opening system. So it is an incomplete digestive tract where food and waste enter and exit through the same hole. So there is a lion's mane jellyfish eating a fish. So, most of the transport, most of moving things in their body is going to be diffusion because they're only 2 cell layer thick. So, gases can diffuse in, oxygen can diffuse in, carbon dioxide can diffuse out. All of their transport is by diffusion too because they're small enough and they have fewer cell layers. The cells are close enough to the surface so that when they produce waste, they just dump them out into the water. Organisms that are in the water have the advantage that they don't have to store their waste products. So most organisms after cellular respiration make ammonia as their waste product. Ammonia is toxic, so we can't store the waste as ammonia, so we have to convert it to urea. Fish, organisms in the water, don't have to worry about it. They empty it immediately into the water and they don't have to store it. So they do not have cephalization or a nervous system, so they do not have a head with sense organs around that head. They do, though, have what we call a nerve net, and that's the beginning of the simplest form of a nervous system. It is just a group of nerves that are not connected that respond. So for this organism, those nerves are surrounding the mouth, since that is where they feed. So they do have sensory cells. They can detect chemicals with chemoreceptors. Thigmoreceptors allow them to detect touch, so if anything is near their tentacles. Photoreceptors allow them to detect light, and it's usually just light and dark and no colors. They have ocelli or eye spots, and they also have statocysts, which give them balance. So we talked about in class that that's kind of like the circular rings in our ears that have fluid in them, that those rings, depending on what direction the head's in, allows the brain to determine if we're upright or not, or balanced. The medusa are free swimming. The polyps are sessile or are not able to move except for the hydra that can tumble, and then some of the sea anemones can move on their flat pedestal. They have both asexual and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is by polyps. So it'll bud either on the polyp or on the medusa. So they've shown those buds there that fall off. It's also what we talked about in Porifera as being fragmentation. Reproduction is sexual. The medusa will release both sperm and egg into the water. So some are monoecious or have just one sex. Some have dioecious, which is two. When they are reproducing, an egg meets sperm, they produce a larva, and that larva can swim, and that larva will swim away and usually land on the ground and form a polyp, and that polyp will form medusas. So the larvae, since they're produced by sexual reproduction, have genetic variation. Predator and prey, they produce neurotoxins we can use for medical research. They can be used by humans for jewelry. They are important for building reefs. Coral reefs are habitat for a great variety of organisms. They also help to protect the coastline. And certain organisms like the clownfish, they live with symbiosis with the corals, and they are mutually beneficial to each other. So the first class is Anthozoa, and Anthozoa are the sea anemones. And here are sea anemones that are found living with sea urchins. So sea anemones also have clownfish living within them. And that shows the clownfish eggs that are around and within the sea anemone. There's a giant sea anemone, a rosy one. You don't need to know the different types of them. Some of these were in the video. Also in the class Anthozoa are the corals. So you've got brain coral, Colt's coral, elkhorn coral, cabbage coral, flower coral. So there are many different types of species of coral that are found on the reefs. So you can choose any of these if you wanted to for your project as far as what organism you wanted to look at. So Anthozoa are the corals and the sea anemones. Hydrozoa are the class, they're basically the hydra. The green hydra or the brown hydra are the examples. They are polyp form. Basically, it has, there's it's touching at food. There's the food going into the gastrovascular cavity. There it is eating a Daphnia. And the last class is Scyphozoa. And Scyphozoa are the true jellyfish, or the true jellies. There's red-eye medusa. There's just a normal jellyfish. Some of them are larger, lion's mane. Some of them are smaller. Some of them also have the ability to produce colors and light depending on where they live. There's another upside-down jelly. That's a jellyfish relative to a diver as far as its size. Some of them can be huge. A beach jellyfish. Some of them come in swarms periodically that you have to be careful of. And then the Portuguese man o' war, it's actually a hydrozoan. It's not a true jellyfish. So the tentacles of one of those that shows the extensions.
Please call the main office.
Sorry, I wanted to cut out that announcement. Last type is cubozoa, because cubozoa are different than scyphozoa, because cubozoa are the box jellyfish. They are different in their physical structure. See that the last one on here. And their ability to, how they sting, kind of how they reproduce is different than what you see with the scyphozoa. One difference between the two organisms is the shape. Another difference between them is that the toxin in the box jelly is more potent than what you see with the normal jellyfish, and kind of what it feeds on in its environment. So those are the cnidarians. I will add to this and put a reproductive slide on here that will tell you how it goes through its life. Okay, to finish this up, we're going to talk about the life cycle, because a lot of times with cnidarians, the life cycle alternates between the polyp and the medusa. So they alternate between the sessile polyps, and they reproduce asexually, and swimming medusa that reproduce sexually. One of these stages is missing in many of the different forms. So you have medusa that release egg and sperm that form a zygote. That zygote then will form a diploid organism, that is the polyp. The polyp will then reproduce asexually by mitosis to form a new medusa. Then that medusa will actually reproduce again and form a new individual. So they medusas are actually are asexually reproduced from the polyp. So it will alternate between swimming form that reproduces sexually to the polyp, which reproduces by mitosis to make the medusas for the next part of the stage.